Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 219. I am so glad you are here. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk all about finding your people, how to find the people that you and your kids can get and they can get you, and how to hold on to them when you do, because it can be lonely raising and homeschooling outliers like we do. So I think that this will be a good and encouraging conversation. So I would first love to do a quick shout out to CTC Math and Reading Eggs, our sponsors for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of this content and homeschooling in general. I really appreciate you. You'll hear more about them later in the episode, but I'd love it if you'd go check their websites out and send them a message. Thank them. If you use Reading Eggs, if you use CTC, send me a message and let me know that and what you think about it. Okay. I would love to hear what you loved best about this episode, or what was like the golden nugget that you got out of it. So make sure at the end of the show, you go over to the show notes at raisinglifelonglearners.com and send me a message. Let me know what you thought was the most important thing that you heard in episode 219. Okay, so pop those earbuds in, go for a walk, take a break for yourself, and let's get on with today's episode. We are going to talk about finding our people, finding our tribe. Your people are out there. It seems really isolating oftentimes when we are homeschooling atypical kids and our kids are not meeting milestones as quickly or in the order other kids around us are, or they're not following along with what the parenting books say they should be doing at a given time. And it is natural to start to feel like we are doing something wrong as parents. But when you're homeschooling neurodiverse children, whether they are gifted, twice exceptional, have any number of neuroatypical challenges, whether they're on the spectrum, they have anxiety, they have ADHD, they have whatever it is they have or do or however they behave or learn, they don't fit the box. And when something doesn't fit the box, we start to doubt ourselves and think there's something wrong because nobody loves our kids like we do. And I was just talking to a friend about this the other day. I think sometimes we get so caught up in being politically correct and being right in how we speak of things that we throw the baby out with the bathwater, meaning we get so caught up in what we're going to say and how we're going to phrase things that we forget at the core of this, parenting neurodiverse individuals is a parent who just wants to do what's best for their kid, and they feel lost because the books they pick up off the shelves don't match the reality they're living. And so I want to make sure in this episode, in any episode I do, any conversation I have with anybody, I reassure you that you are the absolute best parent for your kid. You are the absolute best teacher for your kid. They're your child for a reason, and nobody can parent them, love them, teach them, nurture them like you can. And so when we're struggling, when we are struggling in our homeschool, or when we've made this decision to homeschool neurodiverse kids and we're all over the place because what the neighbor down the street or the person at church or the friend that we met recently who homeschools doesn't feel like it could work for us, we need to make sure that we always fall back on that reminder that our kids are our kids for a reason and we can do this. So when we're looking for our support system, first of all, I want you to know that this is not easy. It's not easy for atypical families to find in-person groups that are going to fit them completely and totally. Over the years, we've been involved in a number of co-op situations. We've been involved in some drop-off programs. We've been involved in some traditional co-ops where moms teach parts of the classes. We've been involved in some where we hire teachers and the moms stay on the campus, but our kids are being taught by others. We've been a part of lots of different groups. In every group, we have found one family maybe that fits us really well, or in others, more than that. The point is, there's not going to be a perfect fit anywhere. It's just like being in school as a neurodiverse individual. You don't fit because you're not that center of the bell curve. And that's okay. It's okay. Your people are out there. You're not the only one raising kids like yours. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people sitting in sessions at homeschool conventions when I'm presenting, or in online communities talking about things that resonate with each other, if there weren't others going through it. The problem comes in when we think about the fact that we're raising outliers on whatever side of the bell curve we're raising them, and being an outlier by its very nature means there aren't very many around you, right? You're all spread out. So you need to remember that there are others out there like you. It might just take a little bit of creativity to find them, and that you're not alone. There are others doing exactly what you're doing, and you're doing okay. You're going to be fine. There's support to be found. I'm here, and there are others like me here. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? How do we find our people? Well, first, the very first thing seems counterintuitive when we're talking about finding our people. The first thing I want you to do really is think about tightening your circle. Think about closing in and being more intentional about the people you surround yourself with. When you find yourself wanting to fit in more than be who you are, it might be time to move on from a specific group. We have had this situation personally. I've talked to countless families around the world who have had the same experience, where they're in a group and maybe one of their kids or maybe mom has some connections, but overall it feels like you're trying to fit in more than you're allowed to be yourself. Those are not safe spaces mentally for any of you, emotionally for any of you. And it's important to be confident enough in who you are and the knowledge that you're doing what's meant for your kids, and be able to move on. I found myself years and years and years ago, we were part of a group that did field trips and played at playgrounds and things like that. And I've told this story from the stage before in more detail than I'm going to tell you now, but I found myself oftentimes saying to my kids in the car before we got to a certain area, like a field trip or the park, and I'd say, okay, don't be weird. Just look at what the other kids are doing and try to behave like that. We can go back to our fun, weird selves when we get home. Just don't be weird, and let's get through this and try to have a good time. And the more I did that, and yes, that's not really the stellar parenting suggestion that I recommend you take with your kids, like telling them not to be weird in a situation and go look at what other kids are doing and fit in. It's not my best parenting memory, but we were trying to find a group that we could be a part of. But I realized that we were spending so much time trying to fit in that none of us were having fun. I was worried about what other parents were thinking about my kids. My kids were worried about disappointing me and about alienating kids around them. And if we are not around people who bring our lives joy and add meaning and value to it, then they're not the right people for us. So we want to find people and stick with people who love and appreciate us and our kids for who we are, and that we can be in a reciprocal relationship with. We found a great co-op a few years ago, back before the pandemic, where we had a couple of families we were really close with. One of those, my kids just connected with. The mom and I connected. We've got outliers among us, both of our families, and we formed a really great friendship. Last year, all of the kids in that family chose to go to school. After the pandemic, and in the area, the co-op that we were a part of didn't regroup, and their families choice to overcome that situation was to go to school. Our family's choice was to do other things because we were already involved in things outside of the co-op. And so because that family is so closely aligned with us and our family values and quirks, we are still intentional about making sure that we spend time together. And so find the people who accept and appreciate you and your family for who you are and hold tight to those people. Maybe that's extended family, maybe that's neighbors, maybe that's a multi-age group that doesn't actually fit age to age with your kids, but they fit interest to interest, and hold tight to those people. Then be okay with whatever it is you need to do. If it's stepping away from a co-op, even if one of your kids really wants to be a part of it, but you know in your gut that long term it's going to be a negative situation for them to be a part of, be okay to step away. Be okay with that. Your feelings, your gut, it's valid. Struggling to fit in and being sad about it is okay. Finding somewhere that you fit and wanting to stick with it, it's okay. All of that is important. Homeschooling a differently wired kiddo is hard and it's messy. And so you need to be okay as you're figuring out all of this stuff. I said recently at a talk I was giving at a homeschool convention this past year that we have really struggled, and I almost feel like we're starting back over again because the pandemic hit, our co-op and a lot of the different things that we were involved in closed down. And some of it restarted, but we had moved right before the pandemic and we'd been commuting to those things. And then we spent 2 years out in the area where we moved to and commuting for 45 minutes to something that we used to be a part of, and not everybody who we enjoyed it with rejoined. It just felt like too much. And so the things that did start back up, we didn't start back up with them because it felt too far. And the things that we really valued and wanted to be a part of didn't start back up. And so we're here now 2.5 years later, and I feel like our family's almost starting over again. And those of you who are listening to this podcast and are newer homeschoolers, you know that feeling like right now, it's fresh in your mind. What it's like to be uncertain and not necessarily have a solid group that you're getting together with every single week. It's weird. And it's nerve-wracking, and it makes you feel like, will my kids ever have friends? And so be okay with those feelings. Like, live in them and lean into them. It's okay to feel what you're feeling and still put yourself out there and try. And it's okay to say, like, I've put myself out there a couple times now and I'm feeling very insecure and I just need a week or so not putting myself out there. We have this year, my younger two are part of a drop-off program at the Fine Arts Center that some of my kids have done plays at. And so they're doing that on Mondays today. As I'm recording, it's their first meeting of that. So I'll see in a couple hours how they did. And then they're starting a homeschool band, which I'm hoping will generate some friends for them. My oldest did that about 8 years ago, and the band has restarted after the pandemic. So my younger two are starting band instruments. And we've got a field trip group that we're going to try to hook up with on Fridays sometimes. We're trying to put ourselves out there. And it's hard. It's really hard for an introvert like me, which I know a lot of you listening are like, there's no way you're an introvert. You go and speak at conventions and on stage and talk to people all day long, and you podcast and you do emails and Facebook Lives and whatever. And I promise you, I am an introvert. I have a hard time with small talk. I'm really good at talking about this kind of topic because I am passionate about helping you know that you're an amazing parent for your differently wired kid. And I'm passionate about helping those kids see their value and how amazing they are. And when I'm passionate about a topic, I can talk forever, but it's the small talk that is really hard for me as an introvert. And so I'm an introvert. And so I need to be okay too, and you do too, if you're like this, in taking time that I need when I need it. And so know that whatever it is you need in that moment, it's right. And hold really tight to those people that you do find that are important. So like I said, tighten the circle, go really, really small down to the people you can really trust to be great for your family. Be okay with whatever it is you're feeling about whatever it is you're doing, because homeschooling differently wired kids is messy and it's hard. Hey there. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit more about CTC Math. We've been using it for a few years now, and I had a conversation with my daughter the other day. She came to me and she said, Mom, I was going to the next lesson in my math program, and she said, I looked at it and it's something that I already know how to do. Do you want me to go through and just keep doing it? That seems kind of boring. And so we glanced through the different lessons that were in the unit, and she did. She could tell me exactly what she knew and proved that she knew all of the stuff that was coming up over the next 10 lessons. So I said, okay, skip it. You don't need to do something that you already know how to do, and you just proved to me that you know how to do it. That's just one of the reasons I love CTC Math. I've said before that they are sponsors of this podcast, and I'm so grateful to their sponsorship, but I'm also a customer. I pay for my subscription every year, and I have for the last several years. We are strong supporters of CTC Math. We love them. We appreciate them for so many reasons, and that is just one. And I'm not the only one. I've gotten a couple emails recently. This one's from Jamie. Jamie said, at your recommendation, we switched over to CTC Math last month. We have used another curriculum for several years, but it just wasn't meeting our needs anymore. Now we've settled into a good rhythm. The kids are loving it, and I love that we are able to adapt it for each of their individual needs. Thank you so much for the recommendation. Jamie, I love that, and I was so excited to hear it, because it just goes to show I'm not the only one who has had that experience from CTC, being able to adjust on the fly as our kids are learning. I love, love, love that. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, go to ctcmath.com. You will not be sorry. Hey there. Okay, so do you want to make learning to read fun for your kiddos? Check out Reading Eggs. We have used Reading Eggs off and on throughout the years, and all of my kids have loved it. It's a multi-award-winning online reading curriculum for ages 2 to 13. It covers phonics, sight words, comprehension, and so much more. The cool thing is there's so much scientific research that backs it up, and it's trusted by over 20 million users. When you go to their website, you can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get instant access to hundreds of lessons, worksheets, ebooks, and reports on what your kiddos are doing online. It's kid-safe certified, ad-free, and full of all sorts of gamification to give your kiddos exciting rewards, animations, music, all sorts of fun things to motivate your kiddo to learn. Check it out at readingeggs.com/RLL. That's readingeggs.com/RLL. You won't be sorry, and your kids will love you for it. Also, hold on to those people. Like I said before, the people, when you find them who get and love your kids, hold on to them. They're the ones that are going to be so valuable to you as you grow through your homeschooling, as you get close to one another, and as you love on one another. I have a handful of people, both in person and online, who really, really, truly love and get my kids. And my kids are fun and interesting and intelligent and creative and very, very quirky. They run the gamut in behaviors. We've had all sorts of behavioral challenges depending on the child we're talking about. We've had all sorts of anxiety challenges depending on the child we're talking about. We've had all sorts of impulsivity issues depending on the child we're talking about. And so those people who can look past that and see the heart and the creativity in the brains of my kids are worth holding on to. We had years and years ago when my oldest was young and was doing religious ed at the church we used to belong to, he struggled. It was really hard because most of those teachers in religious ed classes are volunteers or parents or whatever, and they didn't know how to handle a kid who couldn't sit still and was still learning everything. And they just saw the disruption of him fiddling and fidgeting and getting up and getting down and breaking pencils and falling out of his chair. And there was an amazing woman who was the head of the religious ed department at the church at that time. And she came to me one day and she said, I noticed that Trevor's really struggling. What do you do at home? I know you homeschool him. What do you do at home when he needs something different or he's struggling in a situation of learning? And I said, we don't make him sit. If he can't sit, he walks, he runs, he jumps on a trampoline, he takes a break. 9 times out of 10, if I can get the movement taken care of and the need for it, he'll go right back and he'll focus. And so she and him worked out a signal, and she'd walk by every 5 to 10 minutes the window where his classroom was. And if he needed a break, he'd catch her eye, or he'd, whip the signal up, and she'd come in and pull him out, and they'd go for a walk. He would, when the weather was bad, he'd run up and down the stairs in the back corridor of the church. And when the weather was nice, he'd run laps around the parking lot. And then he'd go back in and he'd understand everything and he wouldn't miss a beat. She was so special. And I remember this woman because, like I said, it was years ago. She came to me about a year later and she said, I just want to thank you for letting me work with your son. Through doing this, I realized that I really want to go back and I want to get my master's in special education, because there are so many kids like him whose needs are not being met because people don't understand that it's just a little tweak that can help them be successful. And so I'm not going to be here next year, so I wanted to prep you and him for that. But I also wanted to thank you because he is the reason I want to do something different to help kids like him. Hold on to those people. Friends, colleagues, other parents of differently wired kids, because they're just gems along your path and they can really, really enrich your life. Find safe relationships for you and for your kids. I remember a kiddo that my daughter, Logan, who struggles with anxiety, I've talked about her before, was friends with, who wasn't really a safe friend for her. She wasn't a bad kid at all, but she loved practical jokes and she loved playing pranks on kids. And Logan, that kind of thing causes Logan a tremendous amount of anxiety. She's very sensitive. She has generalized anxiety disorder. When somebody does something, it immediately feels destructive or bad or mean to her. And so this friend loved jump scares and pranks, and we had to stop sleepovers. We had to stop play dates where I wasn't staying because it just got very, very stressful for her. And we were friends with the entire family, so we had to make sure that we could balance that, right? Because the other kids were good fits for my children. But now, years and years later, 1 or 2 of my kids are still very close with kids in that family, whereas Logan's not. And that's okay. Build and find safe relationships. Logan is a great, great kid. She's super sensitive. She's really, really sweet. She would give you the shirt off her back. She's just one of those people. And she tends to be better friends with younger kids that she can mentor and she can nurture. And so the majority of her friendships, she's got one very, very close friend who's the same age as her, but unfortunately lives 3 hours away. And then she's got a couple local friends whom she's very close with, and they're 2 years younger. They're 11. And so she has so much fun with them. And so we nurture the safe relationships. That kiddo who's her age in New York, we try to figure out a way that we can meet halfway, her mom and I, and trade kids periodically. Like, let her come over here, her friend come over here for a couple days, and Logan go over there for a couple days. It's important for us to find safe relationships for our kids and really nurture those relationships so they have them. My oldest daughter has a very close friend. They've been homeschooling together since they were 8 years old, and she's one of the ones that went back to school after the pandemic. And we make a point to have her sleep over or have Molly sleep over there as often as possible, because that relationship is a safe space for each of them, and we want them to make sure that they have that time to continue nurturing that. Finally, find your place, whether that's a co-op, a small group of other families who are getting together for field trips or play dates or whatever. And if you're struggling to find people in person, find online groups. For a long time, I couldn't find others that truly got what it's like to raise differently wired kids. And so I was part of or created several online groups for parents of gifted and twice exceptional children, parents of children with anxiety, parents of children with sensory processing disorder. And I stayed active in those groups, talking with other parents who were getting it and who did similar things or encountered similar problems. Then I found one or two local families that I could connect with. We formed a co-op before the pandemic with one of those groups. Another group now after the pandemic, we're finding ways to get together when we can outside of our other activities. I have friends who I've met through speaking in different states, and I keep in touch with them. I talk with them via Voxer. The Voxer app is a great app to be able to talk to people. I know there are lots of others out there. I talk with a couple of families regularly through Instagram messages and through text. And so you find your people and you stick with them. And it's okay if your people end up being online for a while. Get your kids involved in things that are safe for them, like theater for my one kid, sports, possibly if your kids are into sports. There's a family that I know through online social media, through my membership community, and just from being online together for years and years. And actually they're fairly local to us. So we've met in person once and are going to meet again soon here. But their kids have found connections through Irish dancing. So find your kids' interest. When my oldest was young, he was part of the Junior Astronomical Society in Northeast Ohio. And he spent a lot of times working on model trains with his grandfather and his grandfather's friends. And so find what your kids are interested in, and maybe that will help them find some of their people, and then you can connect with those parents throughout there. But if you're not finding your people as a whole, find them in little pockets, get your kids involved in things that they're interested in, and then find communities online. You can learn about the Learners Lab community through our website. We'll link to it in the show notes. And we open a couple times a year, so get on the wait list. Occasionally we open secretly just to the wait list, so make sure you're on there if you are interested in it and the community's closed. But there's that. There are free groups online. I own a couple. We'll link to them in the show notes for this episode. And then reach out, email, message, talk on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. You can find me at all those places. We'll link to all of those. And there are other families like you connecting in the comment section. So do that too. Talk with people in the comment section, because you never know who you're going to connect with. You might just find your new best friend, and then the person who's really going to get you and your kids right there. All right, we'll be back same time, same place next week with another episode, another interview. I'm so excited to bring this guest to you. In the meantime, you can find links to all of the resources talked about on this episode in the show notes at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. And I would love it if you would leave a rating or review and forward this episode along to anybody else that you think could benefit from hearing it. Getting the word out helps us out so much, and I appreciate your time in that effort. Okay, I will talk to you soon. Have a great week. Enjoy your kids. Bye for now.